The most difficult thing is to just wait. Wait without freaking out. If you look at hamsters, hamsters are always moving. A hamster in a cage might be eating at one moment. 3 seconds later, it's running on the wheel. Then 5 seconds later, it's eating again. Then it's climbing on the cage. Then it goes back to the wheel. Humans too are jittery, instinctive, impulsive, erratic, chaotic life forms. That is part of our heritage. They behave in bizarre, out of control ways, especially when emotionally aroused or when they can stand to lose or gain something. To wait something out without reacting is like holding your hand on a flame. But for most things, it's not just a matter of waiting without doing anything. You have to be still, keep your hand on the flame, and at the same time you have to focus and keep doing what you're doing. Now, how many people can do that? If you answer that question, you also have an answer to the question, how many people in the world have what they want? There are a bunch of things that make it even harder to hold your hand on the flame, and I will list them now. Low IQ definitely predisposes you to acting in the sort of way that I have described. The scarcity mentality, which leads to fear-based reactions. Lack of schooling, and you will hear me very often talking absolute shit about education, but one thing it teaches how to do is to just relax and sit down. So if you don't have any schooling, you probably have more of an issue with just relaxing. The addiction to stimulation, people who constantly need to do things, see things, and move around with their body, will find it even harder to keep the hand on the flame. Wrong expectations about time frames. People who think, well, I'm gonna try this thing for 6 months and then see how it pans out. That's really bad, because as time goes by, you're approaching some sort of time limit that you've given to yourself. If you've ever tried to hold your breath underwater, when you're relaxed, you find that you can do it for a certain amount of time. But sometimes something else happens about halfway through where you start to panic, or some interruption happens and it knocks you out of your concentration state. And now you can't hold your breath for nearly as long. It's the same thing too in weight training. If you're perfectly concentrating, you can do a certain number of reps. But say all of a sudden, without warning you ahead of time, some big dude comes behind you trying to help you, or saying, okay, you can do it. And it really looks from your perspective like he's teabagging you, and you didn't expect that. It knocks you out of your concentration state. And then you can't even finish the number of reps that you were supposed to do. When you're in the wrong mindset about the time frames and you start to panic because you see time is running out, that actually shortens your time that you're able to keep your hand on the fire by a lot. So having no practice and no experience carrying out a long-term plan definitely makes things much harder for you. That is why people who had parents who were entrepreneurs are more likely themselves to be successful, because at least they've seen something work, something being planned, carried out, and the day-to-day decisions involved in having a business, and also how to respond to contingencies, how to respond to emergencies. Having shaped your mind to require constant feedback. This happens to engineers. In engineering, everything that you do, you get a feedback. It's a series of experiments. In science too. And also getting a salary is much similar, because at the end of the month, you're getting some money that tells you, okay, this thing is working. And in business, you don't, especially in a startup, especially when you're just starting out. So all of these things make it much harder for you to keep your hand on the flame, because psychologically, they put you in a vulnerable position, a position where you're out of balance, where just like holding your breath underwater, you start to freak out, you start to panic, because that's human nature, and that shortens the amount of air that you've got, and you just freak out, and what happens is that you make really shitty decisions, and most times you just quit because you panicked. The other observation that I think is important is to notice how most people, when they try to do something, are really like crazy captains. So they might say, well, this is taking too long, so now turn left for no reason. Or I'm sad or happy or angry or fearful or hopeful, so turn left or right. Or I still can't see land. We were supposed to see land by now, so turn around. Or this is boring. I can't stand seeing the same thing in front of me 24/7, so just turn in any direction. Or we're running out of water, turn around. But then the sun comes out and they feel a little bit more hopeful, so then turn around again, resume course. Or I was playing darts and not looking at the compass, so now we're probably on the wrong way, so just to be safe, turn in any direction. And then they say that sailing is very risky, and that becomes the general consensus. No, sailing is not risky, you're a fucking moron. And if you could just hold the thing straight, compensate for the changing direction of the wind, compensate for the waves trying to knock you off course, and look at the compass, not the clouds, it would be doable. You could make it to the other side. Countless people have. I mean, think of Magellan, who circumnavigated the globe, and you can't make $1,000 a month and tell your boss to kiss your ass. It's pathetic. Let's talk about what you should actually do and how you should actually think to increase your chances to go through this. The first observation to make is that this is a skill that must be worked on to increase it incrementally. And it's like a muscle. So you can't all of a sudden decide that you're going to fundamentally increase your time horizon. A time horizon is a volitional and execution boundary. The hamster has a volition time horizon of a few seconds because it changes what it wants to do every few seconds. People vary a lot in this, but I see most people as being incapable of following a plan that lasts more than a few weeks. But then if you look at extremely successful people, it's clear that they're able to continue to drill in just one point of application of strength, one point of leverage. They can continue to drill on one for years. And this is not even considered conspiracy theory. It's just a fact that some brands of socialism installed themselves in some parts of the world by having a circle of people who decided, well, now we're going to take over. And they began to run for office and install themselves in all the positions of power. That is a plan that can take up to 50 years. And if an animal species, like, say, a dog, can be distinguished from another animal species, say a hamster, because one is able to have a volition boundary of a few seconds in the future, whereas the dog, let's say, has a few minutes, then certainly between people who can plan 50 years ahead, or even just a few years ahead, and the average individual, there is a much greater difference. So to expand your time horizon really means to change which species you belong to. The people that dominate on our planet, and I'm not saying that there isn't kind of a grandfathering effect, because yes, wealth can be inherited, and if you're born in a certain bloodline, you certainly have more capital, more opportunities. But really, the people who own most of the world are a different species. You will be at your work figuring out how to pay bills, and they're thinking what country to conquer next. So the reason I'm saying these things is so that you can understand just how important it is to learn to extend your volition boundary into the future, and learn that this is about becoming something else, something different, something more effective. You have to figure out what is your real current time horizon. One-offs don't really count. Things you do for work, meaning at your workplace you're getting paid a salary for, don't count, because then your hand is not on the fire. But let's suppose it's 1 week. Then your next step would be to expand that to a month, then 3 months, and 6 months, 12 months, and keep doubling. To do this, you might use some form of a reward substitution. That is a keyword that you can Google and learn all about it. But one of my best experiences has been with streak building apps, which simply allow you to create a list of days with a cross next to them or a check mark to tell you, have I done this on this day? Have I done that on that day? And this is not just tracking. It's having a subtle but important effect on your reward system. Even just the satisfaction of saying, well, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put another motherfucking cross on that day. It seems like it's nothing, but it really helps, because you feel like you're getting something today. Say you're using it for working out, you go to the gym, come back, immediately you can put a cross there. Unfortunately, we're dumb, stupid machines, and this kind of stuff is important. So you do it, and then you establish some rewards for your milestones, and reward yourself for those as well. This is a way of overcoming the fact that we are not programmed or wired for doing things that have an effect only in the long term. Another thing that you might want to try to do is to learn to relax as much as possible. If you see a CEO chair, it's a little bit different from people working on the assembly line. CEO chair must be comfortable. His office must be comfortable, because some executive decisions really require you to be comfortable so that you're acting with a mentality of growth instead of reacting out of fear. So to get yourself out of fear mode and reaction mode, make a nice working environment, and don't make any decisions until you're fully relaxed, and practice being relaxed for most of the time if you can. What you can also do is to see this process, this long-term game, as a strategy game. Now, plenty of people go online to play role-playing games, and I find that absurd, because if you're going to take time and build something that is not easy, and you need to continue to work at it, why accumulate worthless credits instead of using real money? Now, I'm aware that some of these credits nowadays can be exchanged for real money, but it's still a game. If you put that kind of energy into a business and see it as a strategy game, because it is, then you're just making it a lot easier on yourself to follow through and learn to enjoy the wise choice of moves. When you put a piece on the game board in the best possible position, you reward yourself for that, because you think, I made a nice move there. This is going to predispose me to dominate. We also have to deal with the fact that most people's parents and friends circle are all hamsters. So what do you do when you don't have anybody to look at? There's no one who's doing this thing. Your parents are slaves, your friends are slaves. You need to get that sensory grounding, that is the experience of seeing a person doing this and seeing that it works for them. And if you don't have anyone near you who is like that, then just pick up books. You see, this is an adventure. And that's why people who have made it, they want to talk about it. And they want to talk about the adventure that they had. They want to tell you about the things that they discovered, just like I'm doing right now. And so there's plenty of material out there. So if you don't know anyone who has undertaken a long-term plan and made it, especially in the business / freedom arena, then you owe it to yourself to find out some resources where you can read about these people, to emotionally teach your brain that this is something that happens. It's not a dream that you saw on the internet, and then when your wife or your friend says, then you give up immediately. And this is another way in which children of entrepreneurs have it a lot easier, and why entrepreneurship to some extent runs in families. Because at least if you're born in that kind of family, in that type of family, then you do have some experience seeing someone else do it, do the deal, and that is not a big deal. It works. Just a lot of work, that's all it is. Another thing you might want to consider is to find a mission that to you is so important that if you fail, you will still be proud of yourself. Because the fear is always, what if all of this effort was wasted? And this is really a misconception, because when you actually try to do something, that is really when you learn. That is it. You can listen to anyone speak, you can get tips from anyone, but when you try to do something yourself, that's when the rubber hits the road. And that's when all the knowledge is revealed to you, almost as if this knowledge was taught by some kind of super teacher who knows everything about you, knows everything about the world, knows everything about the interface, and goes and computes every single point of possible incompatibility and points that out to you. That's what an experiment is. That's why it's useful in science. But so it's still not true that if you fail, you will have gained nothing, because you are teaching yourself. In Kiss My Ass University, there should be lab courses. But the lab really is when you go out in the real world and try to do something. That's your lab class. You can listen to the lectures all you want, and we will try to put you on the right way, in the right course. But when you try something, that's when you're really learning. So if you start a business, work at it for a year, and then it dies for any reason, that's a year of the most intense, accurate, and useful kind of study you could ever do. So it's not a loss. But on top of that, to decrease even further this erroneous perception that there's a loss involved, as I said, find a mission that's important enough that if you get to the other side, even if you didn't win, you say, hell, I had the balls to try it. And not only that, but worst possible case, after you do it, you finished the money you saved up for this, and you need to find a job. But you show up at the interview saying, I did this big thing. And now they think, wow, this is a guy with balls. We respect this guy. This is not somebody begging for free money and free food. Now the last part is the most important, which is that you must find something that you like to do. And that is the way that you decrease the temperature of the flame on which you're going to have to hold your hand for potentially several years. People don't really have a problem when they hear that building a business could take 2 years, 3 years. But if you tell them, tell me what are you passionate about, what do you like to do? They're very quick to answer, nothing. There's nothing I like, or I like to do something that can't possibly make money. And they somehow expect that if a solution exists, it should be immediately apparent. And that's not the case. If you have reason that for you would be acceptable to spend 3 years working on a business, I advise you that instead of picking something you don't like to do just to make money and then doing it for 3 years, you would be in a much better position spending 6 months or even a year just figuring out what the intersection is between you and the world. That is the intersection between something that you can like to do and something that can make money. If you spend 1 year on that and 2 years on actually doing it, you're in a far better position than starting out without a passion and doing something, doing something boring for 3 years. Because when you're doing something boring, it's just this much steeper. But don't underestimate the difficulty in finding something that you like. It's a task. It's like a beginning task. But it's a task that if you get that right, now the slope becomes like this. Now it's much easier. So it's definitely something that most people neglect and they should pay a lot of attention to. The other thing is that if you have a passion, you're not really competing against anyone, because the world is full of idiots who just want money. And companies are especially like that because by definition they are a machine that produces wealth. And as I will cover in another video, passion is very rare. Products are abundant, services are abundant, passion is rare. Because when you're passionate about something, you're going to do it really, really well. You're going to do it well beyond the point of profitability. That is going to create a surplus, an extra that people don't expect to get. Could be in customer service, could be how good your product is, could be that you answer emails in 5 minutes instead of 2 days, could be anything. But it's going to give you that surplus that is beyond what you need to be profitable. And companies don't have that because they do whatever is needed and not an inch more. So that means that you would be defeating your competition before you even start and before you even know who they are. That is another side benefit of finding something that you're passionate about. So this could very well be your first homework. Dig into it. Imagine it's a history exam. You don't have any expectation to be done in 5 minutes. Dig and dig and dig until you find the intersection between something you can love and something that can create money. Be very creative about it. Look at what other people have done. Look at the shit that's out there right now. I mean, what was the one that I was looking at the other day? And I said, it's impossible. How are these guys even making money? There's all sorts of stuff out there. Just search on Google. And when you see it, and you think, okay, well, that's a company, so evidently they're making money doing it. It seems like everything, yeah, sure, they're making money. But when it's yours and no one else is doing it, or they're not doing it the way you want to do it, or they're not doing it with passion, then it's harder. Then you're full of doubts. You think, well, I don't know, will they buy this? Is anyone going to be interested? Just focus, what do I like to do? From the like, everything else flows. I hope this video has been useful to you. And if it has, please consider subscribing, resharing, tattooing it on your vagina, whatever you need to do. Peace.